Welcome back to the News Hour. Now let's take a look at some stories across Europe that have caught our eye. With me to review them are Liberal Democrat Councillor Rubina Khan and actress Abigail Clay. Well, thank you very much, both of you, for joining us here at TRT World. So, of course, starting off with a topic that you probably can guess now, the elections. Well, it's 2 days left of the elections and Labour and Tories are focusing on key messages around NHS and Brexit in the final days of campaigning. Just first of all, a general view on the campaigning so far, Rubina, from you.
Well, actually, when we're talking about general elections, we can look at the polls and etc. But what we should be focusing on is whether or not we remain in the European Union. And on behalf of the Liberal Democrats, the party of Remain, we've always been making sure that we want to campaign to remain in Europe. But in this election, when we look at the Conservatives, they have been, or Boris has unofficially become the leader of the Leave party, whereas the Labour Party has been very neutral on their stance on Europe. And this fundamentally affects the NHS, our economy, the way we look forward in this country as well. And so the key messages that are now coming out in the last couple of hours has been one of the key things, NHS, and how we fund that, what we are going to do. And people often forget that the NHS and Europe are very much married up together. They were both created after World War II. After the Beveridge Report, we had the National Health Service, and then we had the European Union, which was formed. Much of our workforce comes from the European Union. We have 1.5 million people working in the NHS. 1 in 20 come from the European Union. So we really have to talk about the NHS not as a political football, but as something that we care about in this country.
Well, Abigail, what are your thoughts on the NHS debate? I've just actually had a talk here with Asa just early on and said, from my own personal experience, I've had bad experience for the past couple of months, especially my GP moving to Italy because of the fear of Brexit.
Yes, there's actually a great many people in my family who work for the NHS, so I do have an insider's view into the crisis as it stands, and it's not, speaking about a catastrophe that's not true. It can be seen, and I think what's interesting in the campaigning is that Boris Johnson just hasn't come across as someone who cares about it at all. And Jeremy Corbyn, though there are many arguments that can be thrown his way, he does at least come across as someone who really cares about the people in his country, whereas Boris Johnson comes across as someone who's trying to convince himself and the rest of us that he has a magic way to leave Brexit in just one extra month. I can't see how that's going to happen. So his main draw that he's trying to get people to vote for him, I don't believe he can do. And he's up against someone who is coming across extremely empathetic, which unfortunately he doesn't.
Well, talking about that image, their latest campaign video has had a lot of attention, and it was the same scene from Love Actually, the scene that I love, most of us do love. We can actually see it now there. As you can see, it is the part which is played by Keira Knightley, and Boris Johnson is holding those placards. And Hugh Grant had a few things to say about this as well. So what are your thoughts, Rubina?
Well, Hugh Grant actually campaigned with one of our candidates, Luciane Berger, and also campaigned with Chuka as well. And what I would say is that one of the placards is missing, and that placard is at Christmas time, you tell the truth. Now, we need to know about the NHS, how that will be funded, where we will get the resources, how it will maintain itself if he leaves without a deal. And I think fundamentally that's what we should be talking about.
And what did you think about this campaign video, Abigail?
Well, obviously I can look at it from an actor's point of view, and I would be horrified if a party who I was strongly against used a scene that I was in for their own gain. I really, to know that Hugh Grant, obviously not that he was in this scene, but was strongly against it, I'd be furious.
So moving on from campaigning and election, well, not moving on a softer note really, moving on a harder one. India's so moving on to the second topic, India's lower house of parliament has passed a controversial citizenship amendment bill which will grant citizenship to religious minorities from neighbouring countries, with legal experts saying it violates the country's secular constitution. So can you tell us a bit more on this, Rubina?
Well, certainly the lower house of Parliament has passed this, and now is the test for the upper house whether or not the BJP ratify this. And the BJP don't have the majority. And what it's saying is that the Constitution, India's Constitution, states very clearly that faith should not be a condition by which you should be, that someone should be granted citizenship. There are almost 15% of the population in India are Muslims. And I think what we also have to consider that India is a massive economy. It's part of the BRIC, which is the Brazil, Russia, India and China consortium of massive markets. And in going forward, I think it's time now before the upper house of Parliament consider this amendment, that in doing so they must look at history. Gandhi helped create India, and he ensured that it would go towards a direction of national purpose with dignity and to unite people. And I think this is what they should be looking at, uniting people and not dividing people.
So, as you mentioned there, the major criticism of the bill has been that it